Let's bring in co-host of Morning Joe and staff writer at The Atlantic, Jonathan Lemire, former North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory, and Democratic strategist and senior advisor to the James Tallarico campaign, Chuck Rocha. Let's play Donald Trump talking about his invitation to Versailles. We'll start off with that.
The French president, who happens to be a very nice man, invited me to dinner at Versailles. And Versailles is not a gold leaf. Versailles is the real deal. And I said, I'd like to do it. I mean, you know, all it means is that I get home later in the evening, meaning early in the morning, and I'm not a big sleeper anyway. I'll be in the Oval Office I won't lose any time in the Oval Office. So I have to say this, our country is doing really well. We're doing better than we've ever done as a country. The stock market's the highest, everything's the highest. 401ks are the highest they've ever been by 25%, and we're doing really well.
John, let's start with the optics. I mean, the president already had that Great Gatsby party when they were repealing the health care subsidies. What is with this White House and putting Donald Trump in these perilous optical positions?
I think most of it is Donald Trump's own choosing, and he doesn't care. I think that a number of Republicans have voiced this privately, and even some White House aides at times have speculated that Trump has sort of lost his feel for what people really care about. And whether you agreed with his politics or not, Trump, you know, we saw it in 2016, and we have seen it at various times in the decade that followed, that Trump does have the ability to put his finger on the pulse of the nation. You can read a poll. He understands at least what his base cares about, that he's never really tried to govern for all the people, but for his supporters, and has been largely in tune with them. That has changed this term with a few, first of all, broken campaign promises, like not to start wars in the Middle East. He did that. To be more cooperative with the release of the Epstein files. He certainly broke that pledge as well. And now how he's so consumed with personal legacy. We're seeing on the screen there the construction projects, whether it's the East Wing or the Kennedy Center, or maybe this arch or the reflecting pool of the National Mall, which now is green with algae. We have also seen the fact that he has more or less stopped doing rallies, which has allowed him in 2016 and 2020 and 2024. He would, Katie, as you well know, he would say a line, he'd gauge the response from the crowd and either incorporate that into his speech or abandon it. Or he would have a chance to talk to local leaders or sometimes voters before or after these events. He'd hear what's on their mind. He doesn't do that anymore. He surrounds himself with rich friends, either at his clubs or at the White House, and he wants to be surrounded by, as he just said, nice things. That he cares about the rich and powerful right now, and it seems like, since he's not going to be on the ballot himself again, he cares very little about what it looks like.
Governor, how's this going over in North Carolina? There's an important Senate contest down there.
The video you showed of Trump in 2015 worked. It worked with me. I was governor at the time of the 9th largest state in the United States. That is not the same President Trump, or at that time he became President-elect Trump. His voice has changed dramatically. And I think he has lost some touch with the American people. In fact, I think both parties had. I realized this in 2022 when I realized both parties were bought and paid for by the crypto industry. They were taking money from anyone to pay for super PACs to get on TV to get the majority of the Senate. That's all they cared about was power, both parties. And it's escalated even more since then. We're not Versailles. I don't think the American people wanted to be Versailles. Neither did Ben Franklin. Neither did John Adams. Go back to our founding fathers who visited France. Their goal was not to replicate France. Their goal was to learn from the failures of France. And we're doing just the opposite. And sadly, the White House extension, where I first visited in 1963 when I was 6 or 7 years old, and I saw President Kennedy walk by during a family tour. That White House is supposed to be a house. It's not supposed to be a convention center, much less a convention center that doesn't meet the original design of Washington, D.C., where everything was in scale. We're losing our scale in our country to make it a bigger issue, and we've got to get the scale back.
I mean, if you're talking about the timeline, it was the French revolutionaries that took a page out of the American revolutionaries' books and went and decided to do away with the monarchy and do away in a bloody fashion with Marie Antoinette and Louis XIV. They saw what America did and how the American people took back power for themselves to create a republic, and they wanted that for themselves. I don't want to make, a parallel to the French Revolution and the way that ended. I think that, we're well past that, hopefully, around the world and here. No one wants an ending like that. But there is a lot of talk out there, especially among billionaires right now, that the wealth inequality between them and everybody else is a dangerous thing, Chuck. And it seems like there's an acknowledgement, there's an understanding, if there's not a solution to it, even among those very upper echelon classes, one that Donald Trump doesn't have any touch with at all. Is it because, as Jonathan said, he's no longer out there interacting with the public?
That's part of it. Jonathan's right. Is the president's having his YOLO presidency. He is out there doing what he wants to do, be damned everybody else. But the rest of the Republican Party has a quick approaching midterm election. And Donald Trump has spent the first year and a half concentrating on these pet projects, whether it's building a ballroom, renaming the Kennedy Center, painting a swimming pool down at the mall. You name your projects. And on top of that, y'all, he spent his time overseas, worrying about things that he's had to deal with Iran, dealing with all the other excursions, he would call them, overseas, Israel, Gaza. None of the things that I just mentioned. In 56 races that I'm working on, from Maine to California, where voters are telling me the only two things they care about is why do things cost so much and why am I not making enough money? It's the only thing on anybody's mind. And when you ask them about these foreign wars, they say, I don't care about the war, but I care about the price of the gas that it's making from that war. This is the piece that Donald Trump is missing. And because he is so selfish and just worried about his legacy, to Jonathan's point, he's forgetting about these midterm elections when historical data will show us only the base of each party shows up and it becomes a motivational factor. And right now, Democrats are the only ones with the motivation to show up this coming November.
What's the deal with the ballroom, John? And the Washington Post reporting regarding the funding is eye-opening, especially because that funding and those estimates came before Donald Trump was making proclamations about how it was going to be 100% paid for by private donations.
It's stunning that Donald Trump wouldn't be truthful about something like this. It's never happened before. But it is interesting how the narrative has shifted here, because at first he was saying, even when the ballroom was initially controversial, he said, well, look, at least it's going to be paid privately. And then the price tag kept going up, but still he would insist that it was being paid privately. It was after the Correspondents' Dinner shooting, which, again, we should always sidebar to note that even if the ballroom existed, the Correspondents' Dinner wouldn't have been there because it's not a White House event. But the administration used that as an excuse to make another pitch for the ballroom. And that's when suddenly there was this proposal among Trump allies in Congress to put some public money for it, a lot of money for it. Now, that has actually been defeated, at least for the time being, because the Senate stood up to the president. There have been only a couple of moments where Republicans in the Senate have exerted some independence from Trump. But now we learned that was not the plan all along, was to put taxpayer funds toward it. And again, I think I feel like we've said this for months now, but Trump is just giving Democrats ready-made campaign ads here. The fact that he is taking their money to build a ballroom that the vast majority of Americans will never set foot in, a ballroom that polling suggests Americans don't think is needed, but Trump wants for his safety, but really his legacy. It's yet another example of a president whose priorities don't align with the American people. And I can think of few better examples in the way he's trying to rebuild D.C. in his own image, and when Americans are worried about, where their next meal may come from, or certainly the price of gas.
I mean, we're going into 4th of July, and putting a hamburger on the grill costs more money today than it did last year, certainly the year before that. You also have to wonder, when Donald Trump steps foot in Versailles and he sees all the gilded decor and just the over-the-top embellishments, whether the plans for this ballroom change and whether the price goes up after that, because he wants another golden chandelier or another crystal wall. Let me ask you about whether this breaks through, Governor. I want to put some numbers up on the screen. The White House ballroom, $400 million, now $600 million, again, $300 million from taxpayers. The Triumphal Arch, estimated to cost $100 million. The Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool, which is now green, puke green, as we just heard, $14 million. The UFC fight on the White House lawn, $60 million. Does any of that break through? And if so, which part of it?
No, not for the important elections in North Carolina, Georgia, Ohio, Maine. We need to get back to Trump of 2015, who was a change agent, who said he was going to turn upside down and not listen to the lobbyists and change the things that needed to be changed to make this country great again. He's become Trump the developer again. And that's not why he was elected, because he was a developer. That was a qualification of management. And he is a visionary developer, but not in this way. I think he's got a short period of time, short windows for someone in his immediate team to go, let's get the Trump back that got him elected in 2015. And that's the Trump, I think, that could maybe still successfully keep a Republican majority in the House and the Senate. But right now, that might not happen at all. Even in the Senate could turn at this point in time.